We have finally made it to week 10 of the NFL season. That's right, 10 is here. And hey, speaking of 10, I'm averaging about 10 views per video, so I call that a success. Hell, that's more of a success than when Target tried to expand into Canada. So hey, we're winning over here. Also, when it comes to week 10, we have turned this entire thing upside down. I'm talking the NFL season. We have Aaron Rodgers losing to the Lions. What is that about? Bills losing to the Jets. What's going on there too? Either way, it is Thursday. Well, it's not Thursday yet, but it will be soon. And I'm going to break down the Thursday night game this week as we have the Falcons traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. We just got a view of this game 2 weeks ago, and it was an absolute burner with over 70 points scored in an overtime with a Hail Mary to DJ Moore, too. It was awesome. It was a great game. Let's hope for that again, and here we go. First off, we got injuries. Now, there's not many injuries to go this one, so here we go. So we got the first one, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard, good Canadian boy, just from up north in St. Albert, and he is actually currently struggling with an ankle injury. Now, hopefully he should be back. I think he will be back. He got into practice today. But either way, he'll be in a committee. Next up, we have A.J. Terrell, the one good player. Well, not the one good player on the Falcons, but the Falcons defense revolves around A.J. Terrell, cornerback. And I don't think he's going to play. He's still hurt and lingering with a hamstring injury. Who knows, though? Keep your eye out for that. That's it for the injuries. Let's go into the fantasy. Must starts. Here we go. First and foremost, speaking of, DJ Moore. Let's go. Especially if A.J. Terrell's out, DJ Moore is a smash. I know he's had a down week. This entire Carolina team got smashed by my Bengals, which was awesome. But we're looking for a bounce back. And with P.J. Walker under center, he has had 27 targets in the last 3 matches. I know Baker Mayfield was in there for a bit too. But really, that is too much work for a kid that's too talented to not produce for fantasy. We just saw him torch this defense for over 150 yards and a touchdown 2 weeks ago. I'm expecting another big week. Watch him flirt with WR1 numbers this week. Fire him up for sure. Next up, we have one of my favorite players in the league. We have Cordell Patterson. The old man is back. I'm talking at the 30-year-old breakout. Now he's 31, and he's producing. He had 2 touchdowns last week, and he looked awesome. Plus, he was splitting the backfield work with Tyler Algier, which I don't expect to continue because he was just coming back from injury, and he's looked better than Algier. I know Algier had a good day, but it was really that one big 40-yard run. Cordell Patterson was the only guy in the red zone. He's the pass catcher. He's everything you want. This team wants to run the ball, and he's the guy to do it. Plus, the Panthers are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position, as well as the 5th most rushing yards, and the 6th most TDs to the position. Everything's set up for Patterson to have a field day this week. Fire him up for sure. Welcome back to the lineup, CP. Next, we have Donta Foreman. Wow, another running back coming back? Well, this is an old man again, but he's the only one to conquer the Achilles, seemingly, though. He is having a very nice comeback season again after he performed with the Titans last year. Yes, once again, last week was a down week for the entire offense. We're talking he scored 3 TDs against this team 2 weeks ago. Plus, his last 2 games outside of last week, so the 2 games before that, he had 118 rushing yards apiece. This guy's been an absolute menace. And even with Hubbard back, I expect him to have the bulk of the work. Plus, I'm calling for the pie shop to be open for this big man. So fire me up, pie shop open for Donta Foreman. Next up, we got Kyle Pitts. Finally, we're seeing production from Kyle Pitts. I know last week was a down week again, but the thing is that we're finally seeing the targets. In his last 2 games, he has 35% of his season targets and 38% of his season yards. He's getting more and more involved, which is great to see. He also just didn't connect on a couple of massive plays last week that would have completely changed his entire week last week. So when it comes to production, though, 2 weeks ago, once again, 80 yards and a TD. It's awesome that we can refer back to this. He knows how to beat this Carolina defense. And although the Panthers have been decent against the tight end position, he's not just a tight end, and they don't have the weapons not to use Pitts. Fire him up as a tight end 1. I'm expecting them to crack the top 5 of the position again this week. Now, that's our must starts. Let's go into the solid starts. Shockingly here, we have Marcus Mariota. He's had a really weird kind of season. It's been terrifying. I know October's done and it's Christmas time, but the thing is when your QB only has over 15 completions 3 times this season, it's a scary proposition for fantasy. The thing is he rushes. He's good for about 30 yards on the ground and 5 rushing attempts each game. It's a nice floor. I don't love his upside, but I expect this to be a shootout, and that defense will allow points, meaning that he should have to pass. So here we are. I think he's a nice mid-tier QB2 in a super flex league for this week in this matchup. I play him over the names of Jared Goff and Jacoby Brissett, for example. Next up, we got our flex considerations. And let's fire up again. PJ Walker, my guy. Yes, I 100% got burned last week with a -3 fantasy points by this guy because he got benched at halftime after he threw 2 picks and only had 3 completions. But I'm riding him again. I think he's going to have a week. Now, it's not going to be massive. His ceiling's about 20 fantasy points, but this defense is terrible. I'm talking this defense gives up the 6th most fantasy points to the position, the most passing yards per game, the 7th most passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks, and Walker should be able to take advantage of this. He's better than he was against the frustrated Bengals team last week. I think there's a reason he's named the starter again, which is good news for both DJ Moore and him. I honestly don't have him that far behind Marcus Mariota, but he's definitely more of a desperation super flex play. Next up, I am also putting Drake London in the flex considerations. This one's a bit spooky, speaking of being scary, because London has not been great, but I know there's brighter days ahead for him. This guy has shown enough talent that he's going to be a good receiver in the NFL for a long time. He just needs the quarterback. Fortunately, that quarterback's not changing this year. Maybe they're Ritter, but I don't think that's going to be huge. Either way, he's getting the usage, which is really nice. If I told you over the last 2 weeks he has 12 targets and 7 catches, you're probably like, hey, you probably had a couple decent games there. That's not bad usage. But the thing is, that's only combined for 54 yards and no touchdowns. That's brutal. Thankfully, 6 targets a game. He could do worse. I don't love his upside at the flex position, but once again, I'm predicting more of a shootout. So if you want to flex him, go for it. However, I might be looking at this guy. And that guy's Terrace Marshall Jr. Yes, I don't know who thought he might be relevant this year. The fact is he has 2 weeks in a row. He's put double-digit fantasy points. He needs one more to hit NBA Jam on fire rules. And over those 2 weeks, he has 15 targets, 140 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's been quite good, and honestly, I think there's a lot worse plays out there this week. In fact, I like his usage so much against this brutal secondary, I'd fire him up over Allen Robinson and Alec Pierce, for example. Gross, but I think I would do it. There's your flex options. So now, who should you sit in this matchup? Shockingly, I've talked a lot about this matchup, and there hasn't been many sits. But here we go. Chuba Hubbard. He's supposed to be back this week. Once again, love that he's a Canadian kid. But the thing is he's probably going to get eased back into his workload. And with Foreman having a very nice few weeks on the ground, I can't imagine he's going to cut into that a lot, and he's probably just going to wet his feet a little bit. So don't play him. Not worth it. He can break a big play. Not worth banking on it, though. Next up, Tyler Algier. Somehow, Algier and Huntley were able to keep this team afloat with Cordarrelle Patterson gone. Now, Algier actually had a really good week last week. He rumbled for 123 total yards last week. However, one was a big 48-yarder, which is awesome. Good for him. But that's not going to happen every time, and I think his usage is actually going to cut down again. You could play him if you're really that desperate. I don't want to bank on it, though, because I think CPAT is clearly the main guy here and the guy they want to use more. Algier's going to have work in between the 20s, but on this team, I can't imagine that's going to be super valuable. Last but not least, we have Caleb Huntley, the other guy keeping this team afloat with the absence of CPAT, but you can't play him. He only had 7 carries last week, and I think that is a sign that his days are numbered. I'm talking, I'd rather play Big Ben Roethlisberger as a running back over him this week. I'd rather play Eddie Lacy over him. Hell, I'd rather play 22 Jump Street track star Jonah Hill over Huntley this week. It's funny because they all weigh about the same weight. Just kidding. Huntley's just a big guy. But the fact is he's not going to get the usage, or he's not explosive enough with his usage to be worth the start. My honorable sit mentions: Tommy Tremble, tight end Carolina; Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver Atlanta; and Damiere Byrd, another wide receiver at Atlanta. There's just not enough passing volume for any of those options. Don't play them. Just like that, we are rolling into these Ellis's picks. And if you follow me on TikTok, Fireside Fantasy _FFL, you'll know that I like warming up by the fire. And trust me, I need it. My picks have been a little cold. And unfortunately, we missed both our picks last week by 1 point. The Eagles only won by 12, not 13. And it hit 46 points and not 45.5, where I called the under. Real big bummers there, but hey, what goes up has to go down. That means what goes down has to come up. I don't know. Isn't that Newton's 8th law or something? Doesn't matter. I'm a key student. But let's get into my picks here. My favorite pick in this game by far is the over-under. I love this Atlanta's defense to pick against because they are not good. And I think Carolina's offense and PJ Walker, for some reason, I really like him. And I think he's actually going to be able to put up points. Give me a shootout here. It's only set in at a modest 43.5. Give me the over all day long. I love that pick. As for the spread, well, it's a 3-point spread in favor of the Falcons, even though they're on the road. The thing is a divisional matchup makes this quite difficult to pick. You never know what's going to happen, and we saw a very tight game last game. However, I do think this Falcons team is just a better team. I don't really know why, but the fact is they are. They just tend to be better running the ball, and they just tend to have a better game plan and structure when they go into their games. For example, they almost beat the Chargers last week. So you know what? Give me the full spread on that. Give me the 3 points. Let me pick the Falcons, and just like that, Week 10 is in the books. Speaking of 10, are you from Tennessee? Well, actually, that's a lie. I'm not going to use that line because next week we have the Tennessee Titans taking on the Green Bay Packers on that Thursday night. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and hey, enjoy your football.
My pretty baby kissed another. Stop my dad up on my feet.